Welcome to the Truth and Dare podcast with Dr. Nandi Shareef, where we shine a light on how embracing everyday vulnerabilities helps us live fuller and more authentic lives. Tune into our podcast to hear how women practice accepting and loving the most vulnerable parts of themselves. And then stay for the pep talks about creating the space to do it yourself. Are you ready to jump into this episode, sis? Yes? All right? Then let's get it. Welcome to the Truth and Dare podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nandi Shareef, and today we're talking about an important truth. Dark nights don't last forever. Today's conversation is about hope, especially for anyone who's going through a challenging period in their lives. You know, I've had many hard periods in my life, and you've heard and will hear about many of them throughout this podcast. I've been fired. I've been laid off. I've had breakups and relationship challenges. I've lost friends and experienced extreme tension in those relationships. And people close to me have passed away, even most recently, my father. But the most beautiful part about them, although all of these circumstances were real, none of those periods lasted. They all transformed into something else. They all eventually passed. And today, I want to talk to you about how to soothe yourself through a dark night of the soul or a dark period of your life, and how to hold on to hope until you get to the other side. So during this episode, I want to talk to you and share with you 4 techniques to soothe yourself and how they support different parts of you as you're going through different challenges within the dark night of the soul. And then I want to share with you 3 ways to hold on to hope, remembering that these seasons are very temporary and that there truly is different on the way and on the other side of it. So maybe I'll start by sharing a little bit about dark night of the soul, this concept. It has been talked about and shared by many people, and it comes from an old philosopher, an old saint, and talked about this sort of period where we are ravaged by life's circumstances, where it's almost as if you get hit and then you fall down and you get back up and then it happens again. And all of a sudden, you're having all of these experiences where the weight of them are so heavy that it feels like it's just a dark night that won't end, that morning is never coming. And I don't know about you all, but I've had many seasons in my life where it's not just these little things that happen that I told you about before, but they also happened in succession. So it's not just one thing. There were 3 or 4 things that occurred in one period of time. And it just really feels like that life knocks you down. Not a knife, but life knocks you down. And you're trying your best to be able to get through it, to be able to muster the strength, to be able to get to the other side. But it feels almost like you can't do anything. And if you're like me, I actually couldn't do anything. There were some days where things were so bad in those periods where I didn't even want to get up in the morning. And all I could do was turn over in my bed and pick up the phone and call my mom and cry, right? And so in these periods, these challenges, I learned 4 techniques to be able to take care of myself. Some of these are going to sound very familiar to you, but I want to contextualize it a little bit and really help you to think about it in terms of why this practice would be different when you feel like you can't do anything versus how it is a little bit different when you maybe engage in those practices on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so let's jump in. Technique number 1 is take care to take care. And what do we mean by that? What do I mean by that? You want to have the moment to recognize and realize that it's important for you to care for yourself, It's important for you to create the moments and the opportunities to take care of yourself, because in these seasons, not only are you not doing things, going out, being with people, connecting with others, but sometimes you may even forget to shower. Don't judge me. There were a few times where there were quite a few days where I didn't wash my butt, right? And so when you decide to take care, it's not just, oh, I'm going through these self-care practices, I'm going to make me feel good. No, you actually are taking a moment to say, in advance of these things happening or as these things are happening, I care enough about myself to take care of myself. So in taking care to take care, in my experience, I did things like meditate and spend time getting present to myself. And in getting present to myself, I actually really felt the pain of the experiences. I wasn't able to escape them. I had to be with them. And meditation, what it taught me is that if I sit with the experiences long enough, then eventually they will pass. And another experience will come into my mind, and another feeling will come into my mind. And then all of a sudden, those will leave too. And so in meditation, during a dark night of the soul, what you're actually doing is practicing just letting things go by, not attaching yourself to them. You're practicing non-attachment in a way where when things start to hit you in life, when you're not sitting on your bottom or sitting on your seat and meditating, things can start to pass by you too. In these periods, I would also journal a lot as well. I would write a prompt or a question for myself to answer. And then without judgment, I would let myself just write down the answers, spill my heart completely, knowing that nobody else would be reading it. And it was cathartic because I was able to really get out how I was feeling, and I could actually feel the release. It was no longer stuck inside of me. One of the biggest practices that I used during Dark Nights of the Soul in terms of taking care to take care was also scent-scaping. It sounds funny, but what I would do is I would choose candles and essential oils that would lift my mood just a little bit and make me feel better. And it didn't require as much effort as meditating and journaling did. I would just take a lighter and light my candle, or I would just take a moment to fill my diffuser with water. And immediately I would get a rush because I could smell the essential oils. I could smell how sweet they were, even though my life wasn't really feeling that way. One of the greatest shifts that I was able to use when going through challenging periods in order to take care was actually taking a shower. Or if you have a bath, that's even better. But just allowing the water to rush over you, choosing hot or cold or both, and really sort of immersing yourself in the experience. And what I would do is I would imagine everything that was paining me washing away and going into the bottom of the shower and then into the drain, just really imagining it leaving me. And these things, meditating, journaling, scent-scaping, taking baths and showers, were about creating a soft space for me. My space felt like a soft pillow that I was landing into. So life was hitting me really hard, and then I was landing into taking care to taking care. The second technique that I learned to employ during Dark Nights of the Soul was to physically actually move through my challenge and move through my pain. So at the very basic level, when I was going through one of my most challenging seasons, and also, some of that time was in the pandemic as well. And so there was really nowhere to go and nowhere to turn. And there was the grief and the challenge of all of that by itself. But what I would actually do was take walks around my apartment in California. So I would pull myself out of bed. I didn't even care what I wore, just threw something on, and I would walk. And the soundtrack to my walking wasn't just the birds and the wind and the people that I would hear that were walking around me, because it was a pretty busy street. I actually would play a gratitude meditation off of YouTube. And this woman who creates the gratitude meditations, and I'll link it for you to see in the podcast episode itself. The gratitude, the things that she chose to focus on were so simple that even in an incredibly dark night, I was able to hear it and say, yeah, I am grateful for the air. I am grateful for the trees. I am grateful for this little doggy over here. And so even though it felt like there was nowhere in my sort of like the big rocks of my life to be able to be grateful for, taking the walk and being able to physically see some of the things that she was actually saying in the meditation and the gratitude meditation really helped to change my mood. So the physical walking coupled with the focus on gratitude. There were also some times where it just got so bad that I had to turn on my favorite song and just dance it out, just like really make myself giggle, make it silly, make it fun. And what started as super serious and like, I don't want to do this, this is stupid. By the end of the song, I'd be completely jamming, singing as loud as I possibly could, screaming at the top of my lungs. And it was cathartic because it was physical release, both by voice and by my physical body. And then sometimes I didn't even have it in me, y'all. And some of y'all might be thinking that too, like, Nandi, I don't have any of that. And I get that. And so there were some days where in order to physically release, I would just get on my yoga mat and cry. And I would allow myself to just stretch and move, even if it was Shavasana, even if it was child's pose, I would just allow the natural release that came from my muscles actually relaxing into it. And so the physical releasing, physically working through it was one of the amazing ways in which I was able to make it through the dark night. It was also important, number 3, to meet myself where I was. So number 3 is to meet yourself where you are. And so you want to identify inside of you the parts of you that are experiencing this difficult experience. And what I mean by that is this. There are different parts of you. And I actually want to recommend a book for anybody who is interested in sort of taking your learning on how to get through the season to the next level. The book is called No Bad Parts by Dick Schwartz. And it talks about the fact that inside of us, there are many different pieces and many different players that are all looking to help us be who we're being and to manage the circumstances of our lives. And so for me, recognizing what parts of myself were feeling what was really, really crucial, because then I was able to identify how old were those pieces within me. Were they my inner child or my outer child or my inner teenager? Were they an unhealthy adult version of myself, or was it my healthy adult self speaking? And in identifying each of those parts, what I was able to do was really learn from them. I was curious, like a researcher, like a scientist, asking them questions. Who are you? How old are you? What are you doing? How long have you been here? What's going on? And most importantly, I was sure to ask, what do you need? And let me tell you, y'all, if you have never asked the little girl inside of you what you need, sis, you need to do it. Because when she tells you she wants a bowl of cereal, favorite cinnamon cereal from when you were a kid, you're going to go get it. And when you go get it and you pour the bowl and you put the milk in and you do it and you feel better, you'll realize you've been missing out on some very age and time and space specific repairs that you could be doing for yourself. When my inner teenager comes out and it's having a reaction to the experience in the dark night, she wants to listen to Kurt Cobain. She needs a little Nirvana in her life. And when it's my unhealthy adult that's kicking in and having a challenging and difficult time, when she's been looking to protect me and take care of me in certain ways, well, I begin to play some of her favorite R&B, or I take her to the nail shop because she liked to look good. But the repairs are specific to where you are and what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. And you'll notice just those little shifts and changes, meeting either the parts of yourself as you'll read in Dick Schwartz's book, or the versions that I told you about, like inner child and outer child and unhealthy adult. When you meet those people, when you give them what they need after hearing their needs, what you'll find is it opens up a little bit of breathing room for you to make it through the situation. And last but certainly not least is to create a soundtrack to your story. And that's number 4. This has been one of the most profound techniques that I've been able to implement and employ when I'm going through a dark night or a dark period. So I really love music, and it's one of the most important things in my life. And I also want you to just notice that even if you don't have as much of a love for music, that's okay too. But every single thing that we watch, whether it's a TV show or a film, they all have soundtracks to them. There's something that's going on the back end. And I would say to you that in every point in your life, but especially during a dark night of the soul, you deserve a soundtrack too. One that actually helps to narrate and firm up the experience that you're experiencing. So you can either choose music that describes what's going on at the time, or a lot of times what I will do is I will create a soundtrack for myself. I literally will put this for me, Spotify, put it in Spotify and actually create a playlist of tracks of songs that tell me where I want to go in the future, what I actually want to experience moving forward. And so the soundtrack that narrates my life during the dark period is a soundtrack of how I want to feel in the future and on the other side. I truly feel like music heals the soul. And so for me in the dark night, a lot of the music that I've listened to is an artist named Landrell or a group called Beautiful Chorus. They've done an incredible job of just being able to create and incubate those periods and make me feel like I have a safe space for myself. So those are those 4 techniques, really about taking care to take care, physically moving through the experience yourself and really understanding what it is, meeting yourself where you are and creating a soundtrack to your story and to the dark night. So I want to leave you with 3 ways that you can hold on to hope. If you're going through a dark night of the soul right now, a dark period in your life, I want you to know this first. You have gotten through every hard day you have ever had before. How do I know this? Because you're listening to this podcast. You have never not gotten through a hard day. And what's even deeper for me when I started to really think about it is that up until the point that they passed away, so did my ancestors. Everybody that came before me got through every hard day. And for me as a Black woman and as an African American woman, knowing that my ancestors went through slavery and that they got through every hard day until it was their end, but they left the people after them to eventually have me, sometimes that's enough to get me out of bed. Sometimes that's enough to get me out of the dark night. It's like, well, if folks live through that, I can live through this hard moment, okay? So I want you to hold on to the hope, whether it's ancestral hope or whether it's the hope in yourself and the ways in which you've gotten through hard moments before. Secondly, I want to give you a piece of wisdom that comes from my mentor, Sylvia High. Know that your vision must be senior to your circumstances. So the way to hold on to hope when you're going through a dark night is to remind yourself that there is a life that you want that is different and distinct, markedly different and distinct than what you are experiencing right now. And so what that means is that there are current or present circumstances you would have to live through in order to be able to actualize the vision. So you would have to care less about the current circumstances to get yourself to become the person you need to be to experience the future vision. Your vision doesn't just end because you're going through a trying or challenging time. The Sandman hasn't come to snatch you off a stage yet. If you believe in a higher power, it's not through with you yet. If you remind yourself that these are present circumstances, but there's a vision and that vision is senior to what you're experiencing right now. And lastly, almost going in the opposite direction. So we looked ancestrally, but looking ahead, someone needs your story. Someone needs to know that you have lived through this. This may be someone who is right next to you, someone you've known all your life or known for a long time or is in close proximity to you. but it also might be someone you've never even met before, someone who heard a story from someone who heard a story from someone who heard a story, and that story was yours. You see, I'm not just Dr. Nandi. Before I was Dr. Nandi, I was 5 years old, and my first nephew was born. And today, I have 14 nieces and nephews and 2 godchildren. And when the dark night became so unbearable and I couldn't see it for myself, I thought about what it was like to be 5 years old, changing his diaper, and how much he means to me. And noticing who he's become as a young man and as a father himself. And knowing that he's still looking up to me, as are all of my nieces and nephews and godchildren. So when I have dark nights that I can't seem to get through, they are who I do it for. They are the people that I see in my mind. The young people I want to run to and tell my story of how I made it over. And so I'm sharing with you now that, sis, somebody needs your story. And if you can't do it for you, do it for them. Hold fast to the other side, the future, the vision, and get there so that you can look back and tell them what it took for you to make it over. Dark nights are inevitable, sis. But where there is will, and I know you have it, there is a way. You can take care to self-soothe by taking care of yourself, physically moving through it, meeting yourself where you are, creating a soundtrack to your life and to that story. And you get to remember you've gotten through every hard day you've had before. Your vision is senior to these present circumstances that you're experiencing. And someone needs your story. So don't leave here without being able to tell them that. Don't count yourself out. Life is not through with you yet. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I invite you to join us and listen to the other podcasts that are a part of this season. We're really excited as the Truth and Dare movement to welcome you and being a part of this family, a part of this sisterhood. And if you're yearning for more real and authentic conversations, subscribe to the podcast. If you want to learn more about the Truth and Dare movement, go to truththandare.com, sign up for my email list, and check out my services and offerings, including live events. We encourage you to listen, we encourage you to comment, and we encourage you to share your stories with us too at hello@truththandare.com. And most importantly, we dare you to dream. Until next time, take care.